Yes, hello. My name's Elisha. I work at the Museum of Cider as a collections officer. So I'm just going to have a quick lightning round talk today about my MA dissertation research, which I completed in 2018. And it was titled Today's Protests Are Tomorrow's History. How can museums effectively curate contemporary protest material to engage with social issues? So a bit of background on the dissertation. My case study focused on the People's History Museum in Manchester, which tells the story of democracy and explores ideas worth fighting for, both past, present and future. And two of the projects, they're projects that were the focus of my research. One was Play Your Part, which was a project that aimed to research campaigns of the past, link them to campaigns of the present in the hope of inspiring campaigns of the future. And they built relationships with community groups, laying the foundation for future projects around campaigning. And the next was an exhibition that they had on at the time, which was called Represent, Voices 100 Years On, which marked 100 years since some women gained the right to vote for the first time. And this featured historic and contemporary protest material and amplified voices of different community groups and activists, including Safety for Sisters, who campaign against violence against migrant women, and LGBT plus youth group, the Proud Trust. So I carried out a literature review on the contemporary collecting of protest material generally, and then visited the museum and conducted interviews with 16 visitors and 5 members of staff across different departments, and as well as an activist whose placard was actually featured in the exhibition. So my key findings, I wrote my results up into 4 key themes. That it's about establishing strategies around collecting, engaging and including visitors, working with communities and protesters, and employing a transhistorical approach to display, which is about linking the past and the present. And many of you in your brilliant talks today have already covered the strategy and methods that you've employed. So I'm just going to focus in this lightning round on 3 and 4. So working with community groups and protesters. So as museums have so often in the past underrepresented voices of minorities or marginalized groups, the People's History Museum, with its contemporary collecting, want to ensure that they're working with many diverse voices. So for the Represent exhibition, they formed a steering group of community members who sat on an editorial panel, and they decided together what would be featured in the exhibition, which was made up of submissions from community groups such as Sisters Uncut, Reclaim the Night, and Lesbian Gay Youth Manchester, of whose images you can see on the screen on the left there, as well as individual protesters, and a photograph on the right, which is the thanks panel upon leaving the exhibition, shows just how many people they worked with. So lots of diverse voices empowered to express how they feel. But much of the literature I came across, I couldn't see much about how the activists themselves felt about contemporary collecting and what museums could learn from this. So I got in touch with one of the activists whose placard was featured in the exhibition. I would have liked to include more interviews with individual activists, but the scope of my research just wouldn't allow it. But I managed to get an interview with this woman whose placard, which featured in the 2017 Women's March. She actually left this placard behind after the march and didn't think much of it. And then 15 months later, when she was actually attending an event at People's History Museum, she saw it being used as a promotional photo for the event and actually discovered it had been accessioned into the collection. And so when I asked her how this made her feel, she said, "It's very moving and enormously humbling to know that something I made will help teach people about fighting for our rights is wonderful." And she explained that the museum said what they liked about it was the sort of urgency of the placard, the fact that you can see paint drips on it. It was wet when she actually took it out to the protest. So it showcased that sort of desperation, grabbing anything you can and taking to the streets. And I think she really enjoyed that feedback and found that interesting, as she thought it wasn't very artistic and no museum would really care about it anyway. So when I asked her why did she think it was important for museums to collect this material, She said that it's about preserving the history of people that want to be heard, who might not have been heard in the past, where most history in the past that's been told is those in power. She believes that contemporary collection can actually help to take back the narrative and showcase all people's history. She also said, I think it's important that museums maintain relationships with people who are making this work, as they can help one another to create and preserve stories and bring activism to life. And she explained she'd had a very positive experience with the museum, and that their relationship was mutually beneficial, as it benefited the museum through the use of her own platform to promote the museum's work, and that the museum was actually then able to directly financially support a social justice cause through selling prints of her placard in the gift shop, with half of the proceeds going to a local women's refuge. So this is about museums ensuring that we're building and maintaining the relationships, and even using some of this material in novel ways, like through gift shops or social media. The other key point I highlighted, it was transhistorical displays and collecting. So contemporary collecting can be used to create links between the past and the present, and a term that can be used for this is transhistorical. So this is described as objects and artifacts from various periods and art historical and cultural contexts combined in display to question and expand traditional museological notions such as chronology, context, and category. And this has been done in a number of art museums, such as the Frans Hals Museum in the Netherlands, as seen here. But I was interested in seeing how this could apply to protest collections and the impact that that could have. Because I think one of the issues that we have with contemporary material is people might just view it as meaningless or as junk. So how do we get around this? How do we create an emotional and meaningful connection between visitors and contemporary pieces? So the Represent exhibition at the People's History Museum, as you can see, featured transhistorical elements here. One example I've focused on is the Sisters Uncut Time's Up Teresa outfit that they had on display alongside a suffragette banner and costume. And Time's Up Teresa were this protest was against extensive cuts to services for survivors of domestic violence. And I wanted to evaluate the impact that this had on visitors. So I asked visitors within the gallery, what thoughts do you have about seeing historical protest material alongside contemporary protest material? One response was, it's interesting to see what it does, putting it alongside on a wall in a museum alongside all this historical stuff. I wouldn't necessarily pay attention to these things in the street. So by using the past next to the present like this, we can encourage people to actually realize that they are part of history right now. And other words used to describe it were powerful and evocative. Some visitors used the word emotional to describe how seeing this together made them feel. And one visitor stated that it reminded her that the struggle is part of a human experience, and that the scenery and costumes have changed, but not the people. I also looked at some of the comment cards within the exhibition, which expressed that this exhibition had actually challenged their notion of how far we've come, with people writing that there was still so much to fight for, such as this comment here, that they thought they'd come a long way, but after seeing this, they thought actually not far enough. And this points to the fact that these transhistorical displays have the potential to build greater empathy in visitors when seeing the struggles of today through a lens of a historic moment. So I think it's key that as we collect the contemporary, we don't forget those historic relatives that the objects have, and that placing them together might actually help visitors view themselves in the midst of history, and the sort of visual impact of seeing these objects displayed next to one another highlights that the struggle is ongoing rather than static. So I'd just like to end on this quote from the Pankhurst placard activist who I interviewed, which I just think sums up the importance of contemporary collecting really well. So she said, "It's amazing that my piece is going to be kept in there forever. I mean, it's really, really weird. I hadn't really thought about it until you said it, but I'm obviously not going to be around in 100 years' time. So if they ever did an exhibition on 200 years since some women first got the vote, my placard will be somewhere in the middle. That's really weird. I hadn't thought about that till now." So clearly we've got to ensure that contemporary collecting of protest material, activism and different voices continues, and that we encourage visitors to really develop emotional connections to the objects of the here and now, so that they realise that they are actually part of history at this very moment. Thank you.